very exciting day today, all right? We're looking at some stocks that aren't actually moving down in this incredibly fearful environment, all right? Stocks, if we're about to look at the charts, they're pretty much flat during the after hours and pre-market, and that's really good because we are getting crazy reports out of all kinds of different places, both on inflation and the Russia-Ukraine situation. There is so much fear in the markets that I'm actually surprised that people haven't sold a little bit more. That actually shows how strong stocks are at the moment. So let's start off by taking a look at what the S&P is doing. First off, we moved up a little in the after hours, then down in the pre-market. We're basically right at break even from where we closed the day yesterday. So hopefully we'll stay there. Hopefully we won't move down too much more. But it wouldn't surprise me because boy, oh boy, is there a ton of fear in the markets. And people are worried about some of these things, and some of their fears are warranted, right? Some of their fears are justified. Overall, though, I think that we'll see some good stuff in stocks over the next couple of months. I don't think that we're going to enter a huge crash. I don't think we're going to see a huge decrease in the price of stocks over the next couple of months. I think we have seen huge decreases in the price of stocks over the past couple of months, and I don't think we're going to see more over the next couple of months. So overall, I'm pretty bullish on the markets. I think that we're going to see good stuff. I think that these periods of fear are big buying opportunities. So we're going to look at some of the fear catalysts that are making these stocks cheaper than they would potentially otherwise be. And good morning, Rocky Mountain Gobblers, Matt and Albert. Good morning, guys. So we've got an interesting day today, and today is going to be a somewhat chill day, right? It's Friday. We're here to have some fun. We're going to talk about some of the fear-driven catalysts that are moving stocks down, but overall, I don't want anyone to be too afraid of these catalysts. They're more so just interesting things to discuss. Now, new reports of violence as Russia prepares fresh military drills. So, not the best story to hear, but we'll go through it for a little bit, right? The Ukraine-Russia crisis entered a tense new day Friday as reports indicated there were new outbreaks of violence and ceasefire violations. And, that's not good news. Nobody wants that, but we can actually take this as an opportunity to appreciate the luck and how good our lives are. If we're here watching this stream, if we're here with access to the internet and we're probably sitting in a relatively nice house and our house, it doesn't look like this and it's not bombed and there aren't bricks falling out of the walls, let's take a second and appreciate how lucky we are that we live wherever we do, where we don't necessarily have to worry about this kind of conflict because even this is a much nicer situation than what some people in other countries might be dealing with. And even this seems horrific to a lot of us. And there are people living with it right now. There are people living in Ukraine and in Russia who are worried about real decreases in their quality of life and whatnot because of this conflict. In the United States, or if you're watching this in the US or Canada or wherever you're watching it, you're probably not actually worried about, a bomb flying through your wall and blowing something up. You're probably not worried about that. So let's take a second to just appreciate how fortunate we are and thank whatever, universal being you believe in or thank the luck that you've been granted, whatever it is you believe. Thank that. So we are pretty lucky, all things considered, that we aren't living in a tough situation like this. And even this, at least they have a building to get blown up, right? There are some people living out in a hut. And, there are people a lot worse off than us. So whatever you're thinking about, how tough your life is, try to keep in mind there are tougher situations out there. And this is just a good reminder of those situations. Now, obviously, you shouldn't be happy that it's happening because it is really bad for those people, but be happy for yourself that you are not in this kind of situation and be a little grateful. I think that's something important to remember that a lot of us don't think of. We might think, oh man, look at my stock portfolio. It's moving down because of this whole conflict. This sucks. And in reality, we're actually incredibly lucky because we're not living in a building that's getting bombed. So all things considered, we've got it pretty good. If you're watching an investment stream, you're probably pretty set and you're probably going to be doing pretty well the rest of your life. There are people who do not even have the opportunity. They don't have access to the internet. And all things considered, we're doing pretty darn good. Now, as for where stocks are going, stocks are currently moving down a little bit, not necessarily over the past 24 or over the past 8 or so hours during the night. They're not necessarily moving down then. Fortunately, it seems like we've stabilized a little bit. We'll have to see what happens when the market opens and we get some real volume coming in if we do end up moving down on some of these fears, because it seems like all we're getting right now is fear catalyst after fear catalyst. Russia is one of them. Okay, the Russia-Ukraine situation is one of them, but we've also got the inflation situation. And Fed Bullard says inflation could get out of control, so action is needed now. And this kind of stuff really makes me wonder, where was this Fed, 6 months ago or a year ago when inflation was starting to get out of control and they actually could have done something maybe to quell it back then? It really makes me wonder. And we're going to look at what the Fed was saying in just a second, a couple of months ago and years ago, because this is not at all in line with what they were saying. It's the complete opposite. They've done a complete 180, and now they're really fear-mongering about inflation when, in the past, all they were doing was saying it's transitory, and we're going to look at that in a second. But he says, we're at more risk now than we've been in a generation that this could get out of control. So he's really hyping up inflation, and to be fair, inflation is fairly significant, right? If you're looking at the inflation rate, it's gone up quite a bit over the past year. In fact, if you look at the past 25 years, we're at all-time highs for inflation. So he's right. Now, what he wasn't saying was that inflation was a big deal a couple of months ago when we were saying that, right? So it's kind of crazy to see the complete 180 that these guys have done at the Fed, and now they're just really harping on about how horrible inflation is. And here's what they were saying months and months ago. Okay, here's this article from June 10th that I scrounged up, right? June 10th of 2021. It says inflation is hotter than expected, but it looks temporary and likely won't affect Fed policy yet. So this is basically just an article that came out not even that long ago, 8 months ago, where they're talking about these price increases and saying, oh, it's temporary. We probably won't see too much inflation. It's not that big of a deal. And we've got another article from the Fed. This is actually from CBS. It says Federal Reserve calls inflation transitory as it keeps interest rates near zero. And this is exactly what the Federal Reserve was doing months and months ago. And it seems like only now are they actually starting to treat inflation as the threat that it could become if we continue to see it rise. And, it would have been real nice if they started dealing with it a couple of months ago when it was down at 2 or 3 or 4%, or at least at this when the CPI was down at those numbers. It would have been nice if they were dealing with it months and months ago, not now that it's gotten kind of high and we're expecting to see some more. So all in all, the Fed has had a little incident, right? They haven't done the best job of dealing with inflation, and you guys probably remember when they retired the word transitory, and they retired it because they realized this situation's getting out of control. Inflation's a lot higher than what we thought it was going to be. And here's a hilarious compilation of, here's a hilarious meme that Peter Schiff posted to his Instagram account, a couple of months ago, about maybe 2 months ago. He posted this to his Instagram account. And Peter Schiff, he's a big inflation watchdog, right? He is always talking about inflation. He's a perma-bear, basically, on the U.S. economy, but he's always talking about inflation. And a lot of what he says makes a lot of sense. Now, he's been calling the Fed out this whole time, saying inflation's not transitory, that we're going to see much higher inflation. And he put together this little meme where the brains get bigger and the person gets smarter until they reach a godly status. And basically, he's compiled titles from these articles, and they continually get more and more ridiculous, right? So the first thing says the inflation scare doesn't match reality. Now, this is the narrative that they had in the beginning when inflation wasn't all that high at the moment, right? But people were still talking about how there could be significant inflation because we did increase the money supply by quite a bit. So first, Forbes was saying the inflation scare doesn't match reality. Then they were saying inflation looks bad now, but it's pretty much sticking to the script, saying, the Fed said we're going to see some transitory inflation, no big deal. The next one, opinion, Republicans are scaremongering about inflation to derail the Democratic agenda. So then they just kind of, tried to create a fight about this and say, oh, it's not actually that big of a deal. Republicans are just saying it. The next one, opinion, don't rant about short-staffed stores and supply chain woes. Try to lower expectations. And then the final form of this that we've got coming from MSNBC, why the inflation we're seeing now is a good thing. So they've really changed their tune quite a bit as the months have gone on, and inflation has gotten worse and worse, right? It went from the inflation scare doesn't match reality to why the inflation we're seeing now is a good thing. And it just goes to show they'll spin the narrative however they need to spin it to make it seem like overall things are going okay. And it's somewhat scary to see, I'll say, that Fed Bullard, at least, is he is not too shy about saying somewhat volatility, some volatility creating things, some things that could potentially create volatility, right? About inflation, how it could get out of control. He's saying some somewhat extreme things, like we're at more risk now than we've been in a generation that this could get out of control. You know, he's not necessarily trying to quell fears; he's almost stoking fears by saying this kind of stuff. And maybe he's doing it because he thinks he needs to. He thinks he needs to get some attention and get some people behind him. And maybe he thinks it could be good for his brand at the Fed. Maybe he'll be moving up if people see him as a person who's willing to fight inflation and fight it better than Powell. Maybe he sees that as a good thing, and he wants to benefit from that. We'll see what happens with him, but he's certainly very vocal about how much he dislikes inflation, and it seems like he's taking a much harsher stance towards it than Powell is. So that's just interesting, something that I've noticed. And, it could be good, it could be bad, right? If it crashes the market, then not ideal. But overall, I don't think that we'll see too harsh monetary policy being enacted, because Powell's still the top dog at the Fed, right? And he, overall, I don't think wants to crash the markets. I think that he's not going to do anything too extreme. But we'll have to see, right? We'll actually have to wait and see what he does at these rate hike meetings. And hopefully we won't see too many rate hikes, right? We'll see some, surely. But keep in mind, guys, that even if you do see some, the rate hikes would actually have to be above 7.5% to have real interest rates, okay? Because if money is being inflated away at a rate of 7.5%, the way you calculate the real interest rate that you're getting, just keeping it in some investment account that's providing a certain interest rate, is the nominal rate. So it's what the Fed says they're paying you, right? Maybe that goes up to 2 or 3% minus the inflation rate. So that's the formula that you'll really want to keep in your mind and pay attention to if you're ever thinking about investing money in some kind of stable interest gaining account, right? You'll actually want to keep in mind how much inflation is there. And if there's more inflation than there is interest, well, you probably don't want to let your money sit in an account that's paying less interest than there is inflation and just inflate away. You'd probably rather have it in some kind of asset or do something better with it, right? So that's just my opinion on it. But we've also got the exact opposite of what the Fed is saying coming from Cathie Wood. Now, Cathie Wood, I know a lot of people are big fans of hers. She has, she's the leader of ARK Invest. ARKK is the symbol, ARKK. The innovation ETF, and we'll look at it. We'll pull it up over SPY, actually. We'll pull it up right here in the top left. And I'm sure you guys know what this ETF is, right? Over the past 2 years, you can see it did incredible stuff. From the pits of where we were during the worst of the pandemic, we were down at $33, and then we soared over the next several months to $159 per share of this ETF. We saw amazing stuff coming from Cathie Wood. A ton of people were buying into her ETF. It was incredibly successful, and it basically depicts the narrative of what's been going on with growth stocks over the past year. They peaked in February of last year, and they made new lows in January and February of this year, right? They are moving down over the past year pretty much. From highs to the lows of this ETF that Cathie Wood has created, it's down 57%. And that's scary to see, because people were praising her as a god or an investment genius when she made gains from $33 to 159 of, what is this, 100 something percent? Let's see what this is. What gains did she make? 366% from the highs, or from the lows to the highs. So people were praising her as an investment genius, and now her fund is down 57% over the past year. And she has something to say about this. Now, I'm a big fan of Cathie Wood. I think she has a lot of the right ideas. I might disagree with her on some things, but she says her innovation stocks are way undervalued and recent fund losses are temporary, okay? So she says that eventually this ETF is going back up. It's going back up to the moon. We're going to keep seeing more people buying into this ETF. And I do think that a lot of the stocks that she's buying into are probably good ones. I think that she's probably going to make a lot of money on a lot of those stocks. Some of them I'm not as big of a fan of, like Zoom. I'm not a big fan of Zoom. But she's also interested in crypto, and I think that we could see some bullish stuff in crypto. So what she said, all right, these are her words. She said, "We've had a significant decline. We do believe innovation is in the bargain basement territory. Our technology stocks are way undervalued relative to their potential. Give us 5 years. We're running a deep value portfolio. So I believe, to an extent, yes, that she's saying stuff that's correct. That over the course of many years, tech stocks certainly have the potential to vastly outperform other types of companies. And the reason is, with technology, you have access to much greater forms of leverage than you do at, say, a retail company like Walmart, right? Walmart, if they want to expand, they have to buy land, they have to hire people, they have to build buildings, they have to order product. With tech companies, you could have much more leverage than that, right? You could have a program that you write or that you hire a programmer to write if you're the business owner, and then you have a set cost for developing that program, and then you could sell it to a theoretically unlimited amount of people and collect revenues from that. And the revenues are not tied to your inputs, right? Your inputs could be incredibly tiny if you're writing a piece of code or making some kind of subscription program, and your outputs, right? Your profits could be infinite. You could have infinite money from a small input, right? If you have a very cheap program that you've created, but a lot of people love it, and maybe you have a patent on it or a copyright, and no one else can make that program, and people want to use it, then they're going to have to buy it from you. They're going to have to pay a ton. And maybe even if they don't have to pay a ton, you could just charge a little bit to a ton of people. And you can make a ton of money from a very small initial investment. And so tech companies do have a massive advantage, in my opinion, over traditional retail companies, because they don't actually have to deal with the physical world. They're able to sell things that aren't necessarily real. They're able to sell ideas and code, which are extremely cheap to produce at a large scale, right? They don't necessarily have a lot of variable costs. They have a bunch of fixed costs, which means it's tough to do initially, right? You either have to know how to code very well, or you have to pay a programmer quite a bit of money. But once you get past that hurdle, it's essentially free to run the business, depending on what you're involved in, right? Not all of her businesses are purely software-based, right? Some of them are physical technologies and whatnot. But overall, she says we're running a deep value portfolio, and I can absolutely believe that over the course of 5 years, tech companies have shown over the past 10 to 20, actually, that they can do incredibly well and that they can vastly outperform most other companies. And I do believe it, right? I am a big bull on tech companies. I completely agree with Cathie Wood regarding this point. I think that her fund will probably do incredibly well. I think she's very smart. I think that she's picked a decent chunk of good companies. Some of them might not be the best, but I think that the winners will certainly outshine the losers. And she says, our biggest concern is that our investors turn what we believe are temporary losses into permanent losses. So this is another very important aspect of investing, right? She's talking about, she's worried that people are going to turn the losses. Maybe some people were buying in during the course of last year and they're down on money now. She's worried that people are going to sell. She's worried that people are going to paper hand. And she's probably right to worry about that, right? My suspicion is that a lot of people are selling. In fact, if you look at the volume that we're experiencing, look at the volume chart on ARKK. It's actually increased dramatically. It's increased monumentally since we've been in this decline since November. Okay, we've just gone up and up and up in volume. A lot of people are buying, and what you have to keep in mind with these volume charts is every order has a buy and a sell, okay? Someone is buying the shares that someone else is selling. When you buy a stock, you're not just buying it and creating new shares. You're buying it from somebody else who is selling them. So a lot of people are probably selling their shares, but they're selling them to people who are also buying them. So, to be fair, Cathie Wood is making a point that some people are locking in their losses, but a lot of new investors are locking in, or at least opening up the potential for some future gains by buying the shares that other people are selling. Now, it's unfortunate for people who are selling at a big loss. If you're down 50% on a stock, understandably, that sucks, right? That's not a good thing. You don't want to see that kind of stuff happening. But she does make some more interesting points in this article, okay? She says, today we have investors doing the opposite of what they did in the late 90s. They are running for the hills. It's risk off because of inflation and interest rates, as well as Russia, right? Russia is another situation that people are worried about. She says, and the hills are their benchmarks. They are running to the past. So I believe she's saying they're running to things like the dollar. They're running to things like more traditional value companies, right, that pay dividends, stuff like Coca-Cola maybe. And she's trying to make the argument that that's not the best thing to do, that those are things of the past. And I would agree with her in terms of the dollar. I think the dollar, that's not the best investment in my opinion. I think that we've all seen the charts of the dollar, and we can pull that up in just a second. I'll pull up a value of the dollar chart. And you can see that the dollar has not been doing too good over the past couple hundred years, right? The dollar has been falling and falling and falling, right? There's no reason to hold dollars, right? In my opinion, right? Especially, over the long term. Maybe short term, you want to have some dollars in your account just in case. Fine, that makes sense. But the dollar has certainly been tanking down and down and down. And Cathie Wood makes a good point, right? If people's benchmark is the dollar, then I would not be running there. I think that a lot of people are running for the hills. A lot of people are selling their stocks and liquidating their assets, and they're doing it for dollars. And that just isn't the smartest thing in my opinion, right? You guys just saw that chart. The dollar loses value over time. That's what we've seen in the past. We're seeing it right now with the current inflation rate. And I don't think that whatever the Fed is going to do is going to stop that. I think maybe they can slow it, but I don't think that they're going to get us to a place where we are deflationary and that the dollar is gaining value. I think the name of the game for the Fed is printing more money and just putting more money in circulation and creating inflation, right? I don't think they want people holding on to dollars. Now, Cathie Wood actually is on the side of deflation, and we're going to talk about why she is, right? She says, if we are right and the disruptive innovation that is evolving is going to disintermediate and disrupt the traditional world order, those benchmarks are where the risk is, not our portfolios. So I would agree. I think that her technology stocks, ARK-K, is probably going to be doing pretty good over the next 5-10 years. She says the innovation investor said she believes the inflationary drag on growth stocks will end ultimately and that deflationary forces will return. Now, I agree with this. I don't think that we're going to see deflation in the value of the dollar too much. I think that we'll keep printing dollars, and I've actually drawn up a little chart to explain this. So I completely agree that I think growth stocks are going to stop getting dragged down and ultimately will move up in a massive way because they are driving a lot of what we're about to look at right here, okay? So we're going to start off just looking at a very basic formula, and this isn't a too technical of a formula. It's just an idea, all right? That price equals demand minus supply. Now, this is pretty basic. It's not a perfect formula. Obviously, other extraneous things can affect this, but it's a basic idea that helps people understand why prices move how they do, right? When you're looking at not just prices of goods, but stock prices as well. You see price equals demand minus supply. So when demand goes up, you're seeing more people want to buy a certain thing, and supply stays the same, price is going to increase, all right? And when you see supply go up, okay, say supply goes up, and demand stays the same, you're going to see price decrease. Now, a very prevalent example of this that you can see that just shows how true this formula is one that we saw way back during the beginning of the pandemic, where oil prices turned negative. And you guys probably remember this. Here's a chart of U.S. oil prices turning negative. Now, why did this happen? Did we start producing a ton more oil? No, we did not. We were producing the same amount. However, during the lockdowns, during the initial stages of the lockdowns, we were using far less oil because we were locked down. We didn't produce as much stuff, right? Businesses shut down. We weren't driving as many places because we couldn't, right? There was nowhere to go. And we stopped using a ton of oil, okay? And they actually say U.S. oil prices turn negative as demand dries up. So we saw prices go to the negative, right? Prices went way down because demand was way down and supply just stayed the same. So that's just a basic thing that you want to understand. And that will help you understand why inflation is doing what it's doing, okay? Because inflation, it's basically the exact same formula as this price equals demand minus supply, right? Inflation equals the money supply, which equates pretty closely to demand, right? The more money there is in circulation, the more demand people are going to have because they're going to have more cash in their hands. They're going to have more money to buy stuff with, which means there will be more demand if there's more money supply. So the second part of the equation is innovation, automation. This is kind of geared towards Cathie Woods, right? Innovation and automation and supply are kind of the same thing because when you have a bunch of innovation, when you have a bunch of technology coming in, when you have a bunch of automation coming in and people don't have to work anymore, and you just have these goods being produced much more easily, you have a lot more goods because there's less inputs required, there's less labor required. You can just turn on a machine and it can start creating goods for you, and thus there's a whole lot more supply. So when you're looking at this equation, it's essentially the same thing as this very basic thing in microeconomics, right? Price equals demand minus supply. Inflation equals money supply slash demand minus innovation automation slash supply, okay? So it's basically the same thing that we're looking at. Now, Cathie Wood is saying that we will likely see deflation, okay? And she's saying this because she's a big bull on innovation and automation. She thinks that innovation and automation are going to vastly outpace what we've seen in the past, that we're going to have a ton of new technologies helping us create a ton of new stuff, and that increase in supply, it's going to be a larger negative number on this side of the equation, which means inflation will be lower, okay? Because you're looking at demand minus supply. As supply goes up, inflation or price moves down. Now, will it move down in terms of dollars? I don't think so. I think that we constantly pump up the money supply, and we pump it up probably more than what innovation and automation are able to get us, right? I think there's a whole lot of money supply increases, and we're going to take a look. I mean, it's crazy stuff. Just how much money. I mean, you guys have already seen the statistics, but we're going to look at this one story one more time because we've looked at it so many times, but we'll look at it one more time. 80% of US dollars in existence printed in the last 22 months, all right? We are not slowing down with the creation of money. The money supply is going up and up and up, and innovation and automation can only catch up so much to the dramatic increases. So do I think we're going to see deflation in terms of the dollar? Not necessarily. Now, does Cathie Wood necessarily think that? I don't know if she does, because she is also a big bull on Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptocurrencies. And those are actually, well, at least Bitcoin is a deflationary asset because there's a certain amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist. And we'll pull up the price of Bitcoin right here. It's around 40,000. There's only 21 million that'll ever exist. And so when you're combining that with this equation, the money supply, if you're using Bitcoin as your money, this constantly stays the same. So maybe demand can increase for other reasons, right? Demand could increase for other reasons, but not necessarily because of the money supply. So maybe demand just increases because people want more stuff and there's more velocity of money and they're trading it around more. And sure, maybe demand could increase for that reason. But take out money supply out of the equation, right? Because with Bitcoin, if we're all using Bitcoin in Cathie Wood's world, then it's a deflationary asset and you don't have to worry about that. And then automation, innovation, and supply would be able to increase just at their normal rate. And so we would actually see deflation, right? If we saw supply increasing due to innovation and automation, and we take out this money supply part of the equation, we don't have to worry about that, then we would actually see deflation. So I see where Cathie Wood is coming from, and it's an interesting point that she makes. I don't think it'll happen with the dollar, though. I just wanted to point that out. I think that we just print and print and print, and we print far too much. So I'm not on board with everything Cathie Wood says, but she certainly makes some good points. She certainly made some really good investments. I'm a big fan of Cathie Wood. Whenever she says something, I take note of it at the very least, and I'll think about it. But overall, I think that ARK-K is quite a bit undervalued. I've been buying it, and I think it's a good one to hold over the long term. That's just my opinion, though. Now, we'll pull back up SPY and see where we might be opening regarding the market open and where we closed yesterday. So we closed at $437.10, and it looks like we're opening at $437.06 if we stay there for the next 30 seconds. That's where we'll open. Now, we've got some more stuff to talk about. We'll watch the market open for a minute, but then we have to talk about California and Gavin Newsom and federal student debt and COVID cases and DeepMind AI scientists and nuclear fusion reactors. There's a whole ton of stuff in the Fed monetary policy report. There's a ton of stuff that we've got to get through. I mean, there's a lot that's happening this Friday, and we're not going to have a chance for the next 3 days to talk about it because it's a Saturday, a Sunday, and then Monday. I'll pull up the little calendar. Monday is a holiday for the stock market. It's President's Day, and Monday, February 21st, it's called Washington's birthday on this calendar, but the markets will be closed, so we won't actually have a chance to talk on Monday. But we'll try to get out what we can in this stream. There's a whole lot to talk about, though. We've got California, like I said, and that is a very interesting story, in my opinion. Now, Sundial, we will briefly take a look at that while the market's opening, just talk about what's been going on with the price. You can see that it's actually been hitting the 61-cent support, and we broke down below it for a very brief moment, both during the trading hours yesterday and during the after hours. Right now, it looks like we are currently struggling with it. We're going to see if we can use that 61 cent as support once again. Hopefully we will. It looks like the stock market is making a move to the upside. Hopefully we're going to see that translate into Sundial and AMC and DWAC, which is currently struggling with 90 bucks. So we'll see. We'll see what we got. Kitchener says, Rob, you look a bit like Gavin. Oh, hopefully not. Hopefully not. He's on the thumbnail. I know he's on the thumbnail, but hopefully I don't look too much like him. Now, look at this. AMC just getting a massive green bar right now, going along with the markets. Now, something I would appreciate, guys, if you could do, I'm looking at how many viewers we've got. We've got over 100, and we've got 33 likes on the stream. If we could pump that number up just a little bit, that would be very much appreciated. If we could pump up the like count on this video, that would be very much appreciated. That does help out with the algorithm. It helps me know that I'm doing a good job. And something also that I wanted to say before I forget, Monday, no stream on Monday, right? Because the markets are closed. Tuesday, seriously, Tuesday's the day. I know I said it was going to be last Monday. I didn't do everything I needed to do before last Monday, but by next Tuesday's stream, we will have a big announcement, all right? Big, exciting announcement. I think a lot of you guys are going to be excited about it, and it's cool stuff. So make sure to get tuned in at some point on Tuesday, right? Tune in on Tuesday. We'll be talking about it. It's very cool stuff. So make sure Tuesday, be here. It doesn't need to be even, you don't need to watch the live stream. If you're just watching the playback, that works too. You'll hear about it regardless, but it's exciting stuff. So make sure to be here on Tuesday, because that is the actual day that I'm going to, not allow myself to procrastinate past. We're going to get this thing going on Tuesday. So, oh, wow, Kitchener. Silver says he won't hit the like button and doesn't care how much I want him to. Well, we've got 52 likes, so that's pretty impressive. So thank you guys who have hit the like button. I appreciate it. And look at this. Black Rifle Coffee Company. I know a lot of people don't like them, but they are hitting pretty good numbers as of yesterday, right? Now let me see. What did I? Oh boy, this could be a potentially not ideal situation actually, because what I've done with Black Rifle Coffee Company is I've sold some calls against them. Oh boy, so look at this. I've sold some $20 calls on Black Rifle Coffee, and look at that. My break-even price is $20.95. So if this stock ends up above that, then I shouldn't have sold the calls. I should have just collected the premium. Wow. So or I shouldn't have sold the calls. I should have just held on to the stock. But we'll see. If this thing ends below 20 bucks, I'll still hold shares. Well, regardless, I'll still have some shares of Black Rifle Coffee Company, which you guys can see the mug right here. I know people don't like Black Rifle, but some people don't. Some people love it. And I happen to like them a decent amount, so I'm happy to hold the stock. It's been doing pretty good, and I'm up on the stock, I'm down on the option. No, I'm up on the option, actually. So we'll see what happens by the end of the day. But that's an option that I'm excited about, right? It was a pretty good premium I was able to collect, and one that I was happy to sell a call on for a pretty high premium. Now, we will get in, now that we've seen the first couple minutes of the market open, it looks like the S&P is doing what it normally does, right? It's moving around somewhere. But we will talk about this new California news, okay? California lays out plan to live with COVID for the long term and fight future surges and new variants. So it looks like California is potentially taking the lead, maybe easing some of these restrictions. Not that they're the first to do it. There are certainly states, some states never had restrictions. I believe South Dakota never had any restrictions. But Governor Gavin Newsom said California, the largest state economy in the U.S., is shifting out of the crisis mentality that has characterized the pandemic response for the past 2 years. Gavin said the Golden State must learn to live with the virus by preparing as much as possible for an uncertain future using the tools developed over the past 2 years. Now, this is a quote from him. He says, "We have all come to understand what was not understood at the beginning of the crisis, that there is no end date, that there is not a moment where we declare victory." So he's saying this thing is never going to end. We're just perpetually going to be in a state of, thinking about the pandemic and whatnot. And that's Gavin Newsom's approach to it. Okay, he says California's response plan aims to use wastewater surveillance to detect rising viral transmission early, so the state can rapidly identify new variants as they emerge and determine within 45 days if vaccines, tests, and therapeutics are effective against the strain. Now, that's an interesting approach, okay? Health Secretary of California said the state's response will depend on the dominant variant circulating at any given time, how much disease the variant is causing, and how many people are hospitalized by the strain. So it's an interesting approach that California's taking, right? They're looking at this and they're saying, all right, this is never going to end. There's always going to be some of this disease lingering, and that's just how it's going to be. So they're looking to move on from it to a certain extent. They're still going to be taking it pretty seriously, it sounds like, and worrying about, the future variants and trying to keep those at as low case counts as possible using whatever resources they've got. So it's an interesting approach. Now, I think that we all can agree, or at least that a lot of us can agree, that it is about time that we move on. I think that, we've been living in this world, this pandemic-driven world for quite a while. I think it's about time that we see an end being put to that. I would appreciate, an end to a lot of the restrictions and the regulations, because now it seems like we're pretty done. If you look at the case counts, we can see that they are on a sharp decline. And we'll pull that up right here. The case counts are on a sharp decline. You can see we did have a big spike during the beginning of the year, and we were on a sharp decline since. Deaths, let's see what deaths are doing. Deaths they're on a decline. They're on a decline, and it's something that I think we can deal with now as a country. I think we can deal with it. So Kitchener says he wants to be governed harder. And that, that's fair. Some people do want that. But I think I'm done with it now. Talking about government, boy, oh boy, was this an interesting story. It just caught my eye this morning. The Education Department forgives $415 million in student debt for borrowers who attend for-profit schools. Now, this caught my eye. Obviously, I'm a student, and I would like my debt forgiven, right? I don't want to have to pay that back. But here's why they did it, okay? They said students count on their colleges to be truthful. All right. Unfortunately, today's findings show too many instances in which students were misled into loans at institutions or programs that could not deliver what they'd promised. So what are they talking about? They're talking about mostly about DeVry University. They're saying DeVry University misled students by claiming that 90% of its graduates who actively seek employment obtain jobs in their field of study within 6 months of graduation. In reality, the job placement was closer to 58%. And so, they've forgiven the student loan debt of nearly 16,000 borrowers who attended that school and other schools. And that came out to about $415 million total. Now, that really makes me want my school to have lied to me, because then I could have my debt forgiven. So it's an interesting situation. I hope that my school has a 0% placement rate. And then maybe they pay me, because it's an even bigger lie. So that's an interesting thing that's been going on. Apparently, if your school lies to you, then your debt wiped away. So I'm quite hopeful that I've been scammed. It really makes me want that, because that would be very nice to just have all that debt. $415 million. That's quite a bit of money, and this is not the first time. Okay, so far under the Biden administration, more than 100,000 students have allegedly been defrauded by their schools and have received loan forgiveness totaling around $2 billion. So that, hopefully I'm in that statistic. Hopefully they'll find something that I haven't figured out yet. And we'll see that, my education was just a big scam. That would be best case scenario based on this story right here. So we'll see if that can end up being the case. But overall, it's an interesting story I thought people might want to be aware of. Now, the second thing that we've got to talk about, I don't have too much to say about this one. It's just an interesting story. DeepMind scientists say they trained an AI to control a nuclear fusion reactor. Now, I know nothing about programming AI. I know nothing about nuclear fusion reactors, but it sounds pretty impressive. And it leads us to a more important topic of kind of what Kathy Wood was talking about: automation, innovation, and fewer people working. Now, it's something that I think is important to think about, not just because it's likely the way we're moving in the future, but because it does have a direct impact on you, okay? We're starting to see DeepMind AIs able to control nuclear fusion reactors, and this is something that I believe typically an engineer would have done. It's not even like jobs are being replaced or have the potential to be replaced. You know, if you're just someone who sweeps a floor, it's not like they're going to get a Roomba and replace you. They could do that easily. Now they can start replacing engineers as well, it seems. So it's something to think about, guys. What are you going to do in the future, right? What do you want to do? Are you positioning yourself so that you're ready if automation really comes into play? Are you working for a boss? Are you working for yourself? Can you keep doing what you're doing if there's a lot of automation? Will automation benefit you? Will it hinder you? That's something to think about. And, maybe it's something to start thinking about sooner rather than later, because if you think about it too late, everyone else is already going to be jumping ship, trying to figure out what jobs can I do? How can I make money without, having a job to go to day after day that, just got automated away? And that's something to start thinking about, right? What are you doing right now? Is it something that can be replaced by a simple robot? Does it need to be a complex robot? What can you do? What can you do? Let me silence my phone. It's getting a whole lot of notifications right now. So start thinking about that. That is certainly an important thing to consider because you never know where the future is going to go. And there's potential. There is the potential that we could move in the direction that Andrew Yang wants to take us. And I'll pull up Andrew Yang real quick, which you guys probably know who he is. He was running for president, I believe, in the last election. And he's a big proponent, right? He's an entrepreneur, he's a dad, champion of human-centered economy, and he's a big fan of UBI, Universal Basic Income. Now, you've got to think, is that something that's going to be necessary at some point? Are we going to, at a certain point, need UBI because there's no other alternative, because all the jobs have just been automated away? It's certainly possible. I could certainly see a world where, if they're replacing nuclear fusion reactor controllers with AIs, I mean, what jobs are going to be left? I mean, there won't be too much. So it's definitely something you've got to think about. And you can't necessarily just rely on the government, right? We've seen the government, make big moves, but also lack in certain areas and not help people as much as maybe they could, if based off how much they've hindered them. And you can't just rely on the government. It doesn't seem like a good bet to just rely on the government and hope that they'll implement UBI in time for you. You might want to start thinking about other ways that you could be making money. And the stock market's certainly a good one, right? Because even if algorithms take over most of the investing, and they already have, and I'll show you guys this statistic right here. Let's see. So let's find this statistic. We've got it here somewhere. It's somewhere in this article, I know. Okay, so here we go. Algorithmic trading is accounted for around 60 to 73% of overall United States equity trading. So algorithms and AIs are already doing what we're doing, right? They're already buying and selling stocks more than we do. However, that doesn't disqualify us from being able to do it and being able to make money with it, right? When you're talking about a job, right? If there's a job to, say, in this example, control nuclear fusion reactors, and they program an AI that can do that, then you're out of a job. If you're investing, you can invest alongside the AI, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make money doing it, right? So you have to think about what industries can you be in, what can you do to make money that's going to allow you to continue to make money when AI is much more prevalent, when there's a lot more jobs being replaced, and what can you do that is working together with the AI, right? What's a symbiotic relationship you guys can have, right? So that's something you might want to think about. What can you do in the world of automation? And it's something that you might want to start thinking about sooner rather than later. Just my opinion, though. I think it could certainly benefit people to start thinking about that ahead of time, because when the tides start turning and jobs start becoming scarce, you don't want to be one of the last people to start thinking about what you might be able to do to save yourself. So we will look at one more thing before turning our attention to the markets, which, Sundial, it looks like, is moving down now. It looks like, when you see a breakthrough support like this, it can be pretty severe. It can be pretty severe. Let's see if there's, it doesn't look like there's, any news for Sundial. That's moving it down. It doesn't look like any news is moving down, but we'll look at it in a second. The last thing that we've got to say is we've got the Federal Reserve Monetary Policy Report coming out today, and that should be coming out at a tentative time. We don't know exactly when that's coming out, but we've got the Fed's Monetary Policy Report coming out today. So that's something to keep an eye on. And boy, oh boy, it looks like most stocks are moving down. We'll take a peek. We'll take a peek at the market map real quick. It looks like at least a lot of the lower market cap stocks, the small market caps, are moving down. And yeah, you can see we're barely eking out some gains in these big behemoths. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Tesla, all up, but up less than 1%. The only thing that's up more than 1% is Netflix and JP Morgan. So pretty much everything else is red. Oil and gas are red. And it's not looking too pretty for the markets, right? Intel down 3.5%. A lot of these stocks are hurting today. Like I said, guys, a lot of fear in the markets. This is not the best situation, right, with all these Russia-Ukraine fears. But overall, the short-term fluctuations that are based on these fear-driven catalysts present buying opportunities. You know, we were looking at it yesterday, the equation for, well, we can actually even equate it to this equation, right? We can look at this and say, you know, price of stocks even equals demand minus supply. Right now, there's the same, if not greater, supply of stocks because risk, when there's more risk in the markets, generates less demand. Less people want to be buying stocks typically when there is more fear in the markets, and there's more supply. More people want to sell stocks. So it's a double-sided, a double-edged sword that's hurting you on both ends, and that just means price goes down double when you're looking at that equation. So it's tough to see, but you know it's good to see that price hasn't moved down more than it has. Right? We haven't seen completely catastrophic falling in stocks. You know, this does not look good for Sundial at the moment, down 6% on the day. Not happy to see that. Let me check the short interest on Sundial and see what we've got short interest wise, and we'll take a peek at cryptos. I mean, cryptos are not immune from this fall. We have seen quite the fall in cryptos as well, and we'll take a peek at those. But at the moment, Sundial, yeah, so it looks like a couple more shorts are popping into Sundial. Not necessarily today, but yesterday, it looks like some shorts popped in because we are up from 246 million to 252. So just yesterday, we were down around 246 mil. Now we're at 252 million shorts. So a couple million additional shares just got shorted. Strange to see. I mean, very large cost to borrow. Very large cost to borrow. So my guess is not a lot of people want to be borrowing Sundial shares at the moment, but it looks like that hasn't saved the price. The price is moving down. Potentially a buying opportunity. Sundial is certainly getting hurt a bit. And this looks like the kind of thing, it looks like we really did break through that support. There is potential situation where we could come back. We could bounce back from this. It could just be, if we do it quick, if we do it over the next 12 minutes, then we could just see a massive green wick or a red wick on this bar. If we do end up getting back up above 61 cents, that could be the case. Who's to say? But at the moment, at least, we're not seeing great stuff with Sundial. We did just move down in a fairly significant way, but it looks like we're actually starting to move back up a little bit. So maybe this will be a nice V-shaped recovery that we're about to experience on it. But overall, the markets are seeing some pain. A lot of these smaller market cap, riskier growth stocks are seeing some pain. Let's pull up ARK-K one more time, just see what it's at. ARK-K. It's down 2.5%. So yeah, Kathy Wood's not too happy. A lot of her growth stocks aren't sitting too pretty. They're down a significant amount. It looks like people are doing pretty much what Kathy Wood was saying. They are moving to their benchmarks. They're going to the hills. They're running to the past. So they're not necessarily too forward-looking. I mean, especially with Sundial, we've got a lot of legalization catalysts likely to occur sometime this year. I mean, in fact, if we pull up this story, let's see what we can pull up right here. Okay, so Chuck Schumer sent this out just yesterday. Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader. Okay, he says Americans are sending a clear message. The vast majority support legalizing adult use of cannabis. As Senate Majority Leader, comprehensive federal cannabis reform with equity for the communities most impacted by the war on drugs is a top Senate priority. So he's saying that cannabis legalization is a top Senate priority. And the decrease in price of Sundial today goes to show just how backwards looking people are, right? They're selling this stock. They're worried, oh, there's no growth in the industry. We're worried about fear from Russia and inflation rate hikes, interest rate hikes, and inflation could be worse than expected. And they're just selling this thing when we literally have the Senate Majority Leader tweeting out that the one of the leading issues for the Senate is cannabis legalization. So, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to see, but you got to laugh at it. So, I'm not too worried about these short-term fluctuations in the price of Sundial stock, right? Right now it looks like it's trading off technicals. When we saw the break through 61 cents, and you could kind of see it coming a little bit, right? When you're really pushing on a support level, trying to break through it, then maybe we could have guessed that we might break through it now. It wasn't looking the prettiest, honestly. As of yesterday, we were really hitting it up a lot, holding below it for significant periods of time, and barely moving back above it, all right? We weren't even getting past 63 cents when we would move up, so not necessarily the biggest surprise to see that we did end up breaking down below 61 cents. But overall, not too worried. Not too worried about Sundial. We've got big catalysts coming in for it, and sometimes you just gotta hold and wait for the catalysts to really set in. That's my opinion, though. Anyone can do anything they want with Sundial stock. If you want to sell it, then you can sell it. But I think we've got some pretty good stuff coming down the pipeline for it, and not just on Schumer's side, right? Schumer's the Senate Majority Leader, and he's the Democratic guy. We've also got Nancy Mace, who's pushing for this thing. So I really don't think there are many people who are going to hold it back. Now, the worry that I have with it, actually, you can see it highlighted even in this tweet. He said he wants comprehensive federal cannabis reform. That sounds really good, with equity for the communities most impacted by the war on drugs. So it seems like stuff is going to get tied into this. It's not just going to be a let's legalize this bill. It's going to be a let's legalize this bill, and then, we imprisoned a bunch of people, which obviously, we should be letting those people out if it becomes legal, and probably even before then we should, I don't think that I wouldn't be locking anyone up. If it was left up to me, I wouldn't be locking anyone up for it. So we should let those people out, in my opinion, now. But it seems like equity means most likely more than just unlocking people, than just letting them out of jails. It seems like maybe dispersing funds or starting some kind of program. And I think that's the part that might put Republicans on edge. They might not want to turn this into a big spending bill. They might not want to spend a bunch of money to legalize cannabis. They'd probably rather legalize it, tax it, and collect revenue. And it seems like Chuck Schumer, at least, really wants to potentially spend some money, right? If you're including equity probably equates to something of value for communities most impacted by the war on drugs. It seems like he's going to be giving out some form of value or money to communities most impacted by the war on drugs. And whatever form that money takes, if it's in the form of programs or in the form of just cash disbursements, who knows? But that's the part that I think Republicans might not be a big fan of. Republicans might say, oh, we don't want to turn this into a spending bill. Now we have something to fight about. Whereas, they both agree, let's legalize adult use of cannabis, right? They both agree on that. They probably don't both agree on the equity for communities most impacted by the war on drugs. So that is a little worry, in my opinion, right? It's something that they can fight over, and just perfect, right? They've got this thing that they can fight over now, and great. If they want, in my opinion, what they should do, legalize it now, let people out of jail for something that's no longer a crime, and then make another bill if you want about equity for communities. And if you can get it passed, you can get it passed. But all of these things should be passed probably in separate bills, right? I do not like the idea of cramming things into these bills and getting stuff that most people don't necessarily want passed, or that wouldn't normally get passed just because it's crammed in with something that people really want. I'm not a big fan of that. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of equity for communities impacted by the war on drugs, because certainly there was some damage done, and maybe we have to do something about it. I don't know what exactly should be done, but I don't think that we should have this crammed into the legalization bill, right? I think they should probably be separate bills, and we should figure them out separately. And that seems like a much less clear-cut issue. Legalization seems pretty clear-cut. I think people know we want this stuff legalized, and we should legalize it. And we'll see what happens, right? We'll see if we can actually get that happening. Now, it looks like we have taken a really green turn in the stock market. ARKK just skyrocketed. It's not quite green on the day yet, but the S&P just turned green. The Russells just turned green in a big way. Sundial's starting to move back up. AMC is starting to move back up. Black Rifle Coffee Company, I'm not too happy about it, but it's starting to move back up. I do want it to stay below $20. I'm really hoping that it will stay below $22 or $20 so that I can hold on to those shares and sell more call options against them. But, so be it, right? If it wants to be above $20, then fine. It can do that, and then I guess I'll just have sold the shares for a profit and whatnot. Probably a good decision, right? Because it has risen by quite a bit, but I am bullish on the company overall. I like the company. I think that they could do well. I think that they could take a chunk of Starbucks' market cap. I think some people would rather use Black Rifle because there are donations that go to them, right? Whenever you buy a bag, there are donations that go. I believe every bag you buy, they donate a bag to veterans overseas. And Starbucks, I don't think, does anything like that, or at least isn't well known for that. And it looks like they're over $20 right now, so they are pumping up. They are pumping up. Which overall, good stuff to see, right? I'm happy the stock's moving up, but I'd have preferred if it did that, next week after my call options had expired on it. But so be it. That's the name of the game. When you sell covered calls, you can sometimes expect to get called on, right? They can call on those shares and get them, so. Hey, Rob, can you elaborate on the potential split for Sundial? I just jumped in chat. The potential split, as in reverse split? Are you saying a reverse split? I don't think we'll see a reverse. I mean, there's the potential that we could see a reverse split. If that's, I don't know if people are really talking about that too seriously, because we just got a 180-day extension, so we've got another 6 months, essentially, of Sundial before it's at risk of delisting. So I don't know if we're really talking too seriously about a reverse split on Sundial. But, if we were to do that, then, they might take a couple of shares, consolidate them into one share. And I'm not too worried about that. I think Sundial will likely be moving up regardless of a reverse split situation. I think that we'll probably see some legalization catalysts coming this year. And I don't know how recently you just jumped in chat, but if you take a peek at what Chuck Schumer just tweeted out yesterday, he said Americans are sending a clear message. The vast majority support legalizing adult use of cannabis. By the way, Chuck Schumer is the Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats. He says, as Senate Majority Leader, comprehensive federal cannabis reform with equity for the communities most impacted by the war on drugs is a top Senate priority. So, comprehensive federal cannabis reform, top Senate priority. I think that we're probably going to see some legalization catalysts taking us up above $1. I'm not too worried about, Sundial staying below $1 for very long. I think that once we really get a big understanding in the general investing community, once institutions maybe start buying into some of these cannabis-related stocks on legalization hype, it might be a little bit too early at the moment. They understand that politicians are slow and that there are potentially things that could be fought about in this bill and that could slow it down. But I think once we see that, we'll probably see large numbers of shares of, not just Sundial, but all the cannabis stocks moving up in anticipation of all the hype. And I'm not too worried about a split. I don't think we're going to see it, but it's possible. I mean, there is a reason, there's a case to be made why you might want a split. Some people might be happy to see a split. And I could see it, maybe we could deal with a split. I'd rather keep the price as it is, keep the shares as they are, in my personal opinion. But I'll pull up the statistics on finance. The reason you might want a split is because there are 2 billion shares outstanding. That's a large number of shares, a whole lot of shares. If they did 4-for-1 reverse split, then you get that down to around 500 million, a much more reasonable share count. And obviously they could get that down with share buybacks, right? They could do that too, which they have announced. So we'll see how low they can get it with just the share buybacks. By about 100 million shares, I believe, is the expectation. I think they said maybe 106 million was the most they could buy back. But overall, I don't know if we need a reverse split. I wouldn't mind it either way, because at the end of the day, a reverse split does not affect the actual value of what you're holding. It just consolidates the share price into a smaller quantity of shares, right? You have fewer shares, but they are more expensive. And, it doesn't matter to me if Sundial goes from 50 cents to $5 or from $2 to $10, right? It's the same percentage gain. So if they do a reverse split before, fine, let them do it. Doesn't matter to me that much, right? That's just my opinion on it, though. I'm very bullish on cannabis stocks. I think that we are seeing potential mispricing at the moment because people might not realize how prevalent the chance for legalization is. I think that's just my personal opinion. I think a lot of people aren't thinking of it And that's why we're seeing these cannabis stocks trade pretty cheaply compared to what I expect they'll be trading for in the next couple of months within the year. I think that we'll probably see some form of legalization, or at least a ton of legalization talks and a lot of hype. And I think that these stocks will probably be moving up. That's my bull case on Sundial. And it is now 10 o'clock, guys. So we'll be ending the stream. And like I said, make sure to tune in Tuesday at 9. We've got a big announcement, exciting stuff going down. We won't be here Monday. The markets are closed on Monday. But Tuesday, 9 a.m., live stream. Be here. News, all right? Be here for the news. It's exciting. I will actually get it done this time. I know I said last Monday I'd have something to say. We're moving it to the upcoming Tuesday. So I'll see you guys then. Have a great weekend. Make sure to take some time off. Enjoy your President's Day. Don't worry about the markets. Don't think about Russia or Ukraine. You don't live there. You're lucky. Enjoy yourself. So have a good weekend, guys. I'll see you in the next one. See you Tuesday at 9 a.m. sharp. Feel free to like the stream on your way out. And other than that, guys, have a great day. Bye.